Today we're going to review the Program Inventory Workbook as released by Project Lead the Way. This is a large Excel spreadsheet that covers equipment used with all Project Lead the Way engineering classes. This workbook has been modified to reflect only the classes offered in Petroleum County. In addition to that, it has been modified to reflect only equipment that is absolutely necessary to purchase to be able to teach those classes. For many of you who have already attended training in the recent year or in the last few months, you may have already been exposed to another way to select equipment, and that would be through the new Project Lead the Way web store, where you have the ability to go on and create a list of parts that you need. This is the stuff that Project Lead the Way say you need to be able to teach these courses, and indeed you do use this equipment to teach these courses, but it does not take into account that many CTE programs within the county already own a lot of equipment, and as such, it becomes a massive shopping list. Yes, the Project Lead the Way website is very helpful in that you can go through and select items just based on a number of sections you're teaching of a course. It compiles a list and then spits out a massive supply list that you can then print out and use it to place orders. Unfortunately, due to the growth of the program throughout the county, this is not a feasible possibility because a lot of this stuff can be redundant. A lot of this stuff is stuff that's not really truly necessary for the curriculum. A lot of this stuff is really niceties. A lot of this stuff are consumable. So what we have tried to do is take one of the last of the old Excel workbooks and have gone through and instead itemized, highlighted things that are absolutely critical for you to be able to begin teaching your trained Project Lead the Way class next year. A little description about this workbook. It does have a cover page, the original instructions laid out by Project Lead the Way in terms of what you can expect, why there are multiple worksheets. Some of the codes used in here for equipment, software, furniture, consumables, computer hardware. Even the workbook was originally printed out with the intention that you were starting the program from scratch. Essentially an empty classroom, no equipment, nothing, not even down to staplers or even hole punches. But that's not the case with many of our schools. Most of these are CTE programs that are converting over to Project Lead the Way STEM-based education. It's as such, you already own a lot of this equipment. So we try to go through this and parse this out a little bit so you can just focus on the things you truly need to get the year started. Let's go over some other things. Yes, there are addresses how to place orders. That's the same information you can find from the Project Lead the Way website. Warranties and returns, usually they've been very good about getting the orders right, so I've had very little experience having to send stuff back or stuff that's broken. As you open the workbook and get past the first cover page, you will go to what's called Core Class and Lab Inventory. This is the starting point. All Project Lead engineering classes will need this equipment in some capacity. And if you look at some of the equipment on here, a little explanation, any item in the item specification column that's in black, it's stuff you probably already own. I suspect most of us have access to a laptop or at least a lab with student computers. Portfolio, that's necessary. Items in red, such as this Pathway to Engineering participation fee, that is a mandatory thing that must be paid. Fortunately for all of us, that's not taken care of by CTE at the Hill. Therefore, we don't have to worry about shelling that $3,000. And fortunately for us, now software comes included with that registration fee, so we don't have to worry about filling out purchase orders for individual software such as Robot C, Multisim, having to make arrangements to get Autodesk on our own. Now that's all bundled into one package price, and we get download codes and software keys. Laser printers, digital projectors, a lot of this stuff are items you already have in your lab somewhere. Unless you're a brand new school, completely starting from scratch, you probably have access to most of this stuff in one way or the other. As we go down to the core class and lab inventory, you will see items in red that you must flag and you can get ready to purchase. Multimeters. And the way things are laid out, multimeters you may have some. If you do not, then make plans to purchase some. Let me explain a little bit how this column is set up. The multimeters, there's an estimated quote price. You have a recommended number per 28 students in a class. So it is so we have gone through here and said for 28 students you need 14 meters minimum. That means every student, two students get to share 1 meter, whether it be for digital electronics for resistor code measurement, measuring resistors, or for principles engineering where you're measuring power watts, current flow. In the end, we have a recommended quantity for a class. Now, some of this stuff can be shared among classes, so you have to play it out in terms of how much equipment you're buying. Are you going to use some for digital electronics? Are you teaching digital POE as well? You can share equipment back and forth, therefore you can cut back on expenditures. The way the workbook was set up is to give you an idea how much you're going to be spending per section. For example, let's say you don't have any multimeters. We also went ahead and found a reputable buyer online who was an approved vendor for the county, Electronic Express. You may have other vendors you may be able to use. That's between you and your accountant. We know that Electronic Express has their own prices. They're out in New Jersey. They're pretty good on 2-day delivery, within 1 week delivery of the items in stock, and their prices are pretty competitive. Plus, they have found the way to build an entire Project Lead the Way web page for items that are ordered. They're aware of what Project Lead the Way school's needs are, and they're trying to cater. If you needed to buy multimeters, all you would need to do is, well, I need to stock one section, maybe digital, maybe principals. I'll need to get 14 meters. In the enter quantity column, you go ahead and type 14 meters, and boom, automatically updates price. And you go way down at the bottom, and it has a running total of how much you're going to spend for that. There's an estimated down here based on one section. You would need about $3,952, but keep in mind that includes the $3,000 registration fee. So in reality, one section of 28 students for any Project Lead the Way class would run you about $952 in setup costs and core costs, I should say, such as you will need soldering irons, you will need dial calipers, you will need some breadboards, solderless breadboards. And as you fill out these items in red, which are critical, if there are equipment that are eligible to purchase on expense authorization, we have gone ahead and located their numbers in terms of the Virginia Department of Education state equipment codes. For example, digital multimeters would fall under engineering, in the engineering workbook item number 74. If you are not familiar with the Virginia Department of Education state codes, let me bring that up real fast. Virginia Department of Education CTE, equipment for all CTE programs. This is a list. These are spreadsheets that have all the equipment that the state of Virginia deems necessary, deems justifiable expense to be able to use state funds on to purchase equipment. And as an example, I went ahead and downloaded the technology spreadsheet. In the technology spreadsheet, once you do that, you can see that here's the technology equipment list for all the major tech ed courses in the state of Virginia. And going through here, if I went and said, well, where does a multimeter fall under? Multimeter will fall under 74. Let me bring it back up. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. 74. Item number 74, not line 74. There it is. Oops. Apparently I'm not in edit mode. Anyway, multimeter, digital. Therefore, if you need to be able to purchase something on expense authorization that's off this list, we've gone ahead and looked up the code number for you so you can use that on your expense authorization. Therefore, you don't have to go hunt it down any further. So, items in red are critical. You must have at least one set to be able to start teaching one Project Lead the Way class. That's the rest of the core items, such things such as screwdrivers, socket sets, X-Acto knives, wrenches. That's all stuff you can find through your consumables, through supply services. In many cases, you already own a lot of this equipment. So that's why it was not deemed critical. Therefore, it's not something you should be worried about trying to purchase through expense authorization forms. Let's look at the individual tabs for classes. The next one down here along the bottom, Civil Engineering Architecture. I admittedly must admit I have not set this up. I do not know all the requirements. Where right now we don't sure how many other friends are starting to launch Civil Engineering Architecture this upcoming year, so we'd like to think we have 1 year's time. But even then, we figure it's not going to be as expensive. The single biggest expense in here are the surveying equipment, but we'll talk more about that later next year when we revise this list again. Digital electronics. The digital electronics work page. If you do not already own some digital electronics equipment, you will be buying a lot of equipment off this spreadsheet. Here you'll see a new color. There are items which are nice to have, really great to use to teach the equipment, teach the curriculum, and in many cases you may have been exposed to how to teach the equipment, trained to teach equipment only using this stuff. These items in blue. That is great. Unfortunately, it is also very expensive, and current constraints in terms of trying to spread the program through the county make it very difficult to supply, shall we say, 28 of the MyDAC digital mini systems for one classroom of digital electronics. That means you're going to have to be creative, and that's part of what this spreadsheet expects you to be able to do. There are items in red you will need to be able to purchase because they just can't get away, such as the VEX Digital Electronic Support Kit, the Parallax DE bundles with Arduino, integrated circuit kits. If you do not own any integrated circuit chips, any of the TTL families, the 74LS series families, you will be purchasing integrated circuit chips, discrete individual components, as you saw in training, so you can learn to breadboard. Granted, they would like you to breadboard on one of these nice fancy boards, but the reality is you're really probably going to be teaching your first year digital electronics using conventional breadboards. So all the items are red. Again, things to you'll need capacitors, resistors. So if you're starting brand new digital electronics, you will be selecting, okay, for every 28 kids, I will need to buy one of these kits. If I'm going to teach 2 sections of this, I probably will have 2 of these kits. And again, state equipment codes are on the far left, so you can see what number to put down on the expense authorization form. And we also put vendors on the far right. And the last known price as of April. Price fluctuates, but it should be in that ballpark. I would recommend double checking with Electronic Express, double checking with it. And in some cases, I can probably check over here. For example, the capacitor resistors kit from Project Leap for Electronic Express. Many times there's hyperlinks available under the item number, so you can actually fill out your purchase order for Electronic Express with the item number, or you can go ahead and click the links for some of these items, and it'll take you to the part. Now, granted, this is a basic generic page right now from Project Lead the Way for capacitors, so you don't get a whole lot of description, but you get a quick little jump over to our friends at Electronic Express, who I use as a qualified vendor to the county. Therefore, I imagine you'll be able to do the same. You're welcome to use your own supplier if you have sources like maybe Mouser or Gemco or others for some of these items. That's fine, but then please make sure they are on supplied vendors list. Anyway, let's continue down the line here. And at the end, there are some nice things, such as niceties like the random number generator kit, which at $17 for every one student is a little pricey. But there are other options to be able to do things like solder practice component boards, which are only $4 from Electronic Express. The random number generator is a wonderful way to teach children how to solder. It's a really nice project. It's the big dive into all concepts at once. They put it together, not knowing what they're doing, what they're working on, and then they learn about it as they progress. I find it can go both ways. If you have the resources to drop $17 per student to be able to get it, if you can charge a lab fee for every student to get it, that's fantastic. If you are expecting to be able to get this from CTE funds, I would not get your hopes up too high on that one. And as you can see, some of these items in red, they have no state equipment codes. If it doesn't have a state equipment code and it is mandatory to you to own it, that becomes a consumable that you must be able to purchase from your own site budgets. As we go through EDD is an odd class because while they do request some high-end equipment, it really depends on what the students are working on. We've had our 4th EDD class this year, I believe. Yes, 4th year class go through, and none of them required the LabQuest mini systems or any of the veneer bundles for measurements, temperature probes, something like that. Only because their projects did not require anything required lab data acquisition and long-term numbers. We've had some interesting projects in the past that could have benefited from it, but the students didn't use it. So I would not get too hung up on this unless you already happen to have enough justification in your own budget to want to buy it for your own self. I would say don't worry about EDD. Let's look at IED, which many of you will be teaching this upcoming school year. IED is the entry point for many reasons. One, it's the least expensive class to teach overall. It really requires nothing more than a set of computers, and since most of us have tech drawing labs or other type of labs with computers in place, it really makes it an easy way to get going. You would need some things such as dial calipers from class inventory kit, so that's what we highlight over here. But aside from maybe dial calipers, you're really set to go. Notice there's not too many BDOE state codes on this. Most of the items purchased for EDD are consumables. What kind of consumables? These little automoblock vehicles. They're little toy, wood block toy cars that are really neat to pull the wheels off and reassemble and make all sorts of different shapes. A lot of the curriculum in Project Lead the Way's IED class has been written to reference these cars, such as how to sample measurements without calipers, such as being able to do basic isometric sketching. They like to use these a lot as samples. Are they uber critical? No. I a long time ago found a small set of sample vehicles for auto blocks. They were only 1/3 the size, therefore 1/3 the price. I bought a set, and the kids don't know they were only playing with a tiny version of the cars. These are the full-size ones. But since so much of the curriculum reference these as examples, we figured it'd be nice if you can get one of each. That'd be great. Get a couple of them each, or get a few of them so the kids can see what they're looking at in the online curriculum. Notice no state codes. Therefore, this is entirely up to you. You want to spend $41 for the Automoblocks S9 sedan. Linking cubes. There's going to be a project called the Puzzle Cube, where the kids will have to prototype ideas. These are the linking cubes. These are little square, half-inch by half-inch, I believe, little block. No, sorry, 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch little blocks that have connectors and they can interlink, and essentially you can make all sorts of great Tetris-looking shapes. And the point being, you can use these for brainstorming. They're wonderful to have if you have them. You can get them in most teacher supply stores. You can get them at Amazon. You can find them anywhere substantially cheaper than what Project Lead the Way sourcing at this outfit called Fisher Science. Again, it's blue. It's a nicety. I just use masking tape with little wood blocks to tell them to tape the blocks together. In small loops to be able to prototype their ideas. It seems to work fine for us. So again, more blue niceties, but the rest of the stuff is stuff that you probably have on hand or stuff that you really don't need. In the 9 years I've taught Introduction to Engineering Design, I have not had a need for low carbon steel 1/2 inch diameter balls. I've not had the need for the acrylic ball, the opaque extruded acrylic 1/2 inch balls. And looking through the curriculum, I don't see immediate need for them. So be careful being caught up thinking I need to have the machine, the 2 and 1/4 inch button making kit. At $260, again, it's a nice toy, but it is not necessary to teach the curriculum. In fact, there are part files on part of the resources in the curriculum to let the kids assemble this thing in Inventor. And to me, that's more of a challenge. Yes, it would be cool to show them this is the physical model, and this is how we can make buttons, but it is not a necessary part. Let's go look over the Apollo 13 DVD, second in Charles McKay's used books. You can probably find this for a couple of dollars. Versus even 15 is pretty cheap if you get a DVD copy. At one point, they do make a reference to, I do believe it's design briefs later on, and you can watch a small segment. You can watch the same small segment from Project Lead the Way through YouTube. So you don't actually spend 2 hours watching the movie. You only watch a small little segment concerning design briefs of how engineers have to quickly come up with alternate solutions. It's a 10-minute clip. It's quite interesting for those who have not seen Apollo 13. But you really don't even need to own the whole movie. You can just play the snippet off YouTube. Let's see, aluminum rulers are nice, but you probably already have some. Here's an important one. 3/4 inch wooden square blocks. Many of us with CTE connections have already found sources for miscellaneous lumber, miscellaneous wood products, not necessarily just stock, also wood, but odd little things, dowels, wood spheres, whatever you need. So this is one of the consumables that you will be using somewhere in the first semester to make your puzzle cubes. And I listed here in red saying you're going to need to buy some. I offer Electronic Express only because at $61.50 for a box of 1,000, and there's the people who are cutting from there are actually do a pretty decent job of getting them dead on. Other vendors, one particular in Maine, didn't seem to be as concerned that most of my puzzle cube blocks weren't 0.75. After we do statistical analysis and standard deviation on their measurements on the ones from Maine, we realized they were really off. The ones from Electronics Express are actually kind of nice. And oh look, a link to wood blocks from an electronics supplier. Again, Electronics Express it only gives you the part number doesn't give you the picture, but Electronics Express is aware of your needs because of Project Lead the Way. In fact, maybe we'll go Project Lead the Way and see if we come up with the PLTW webpage. It's somewhere in here within the custom kits categories. Categories, there may be a separate PLTW page, but you can find that at your own time. I won't take up more of your time here. Let's go back to the rest of the workbook. Alright, so the rest of IAD, markers, transparencies, a lot of this stuff is just miscellaneous crafts. Supply services will get you this a lot cheaper than anything that the Project Lead the Way site designer can supply. So on average, $407 per year in consumables just for IAD is a good number. Let's look at Principles of Engineering. This one is the heavyweight. If you are starting a brand new Principles Engineering class, the curriculum has been changed substantially. It used to be taught with something called Fisher Technique. These odd little plastic, I call them German Legos. They're made to fit in certain angles. They look nice when they're brand new, but over time they wear out, they break, they become very stiff. They're very annoying to use. We had them at Woodbridge many years ago, and most of the kids would just struggle just to get the machine to work reliably, only not because of their overall design, but because the actual components were worn out or breaking or wouldn't fit anymore because they were just very stiff and very hard to move them within the slide portions back and forth. Project Lead the Way partnered up with VEX a long time ago, and as such are supplying VEX equipment. You have the VEX POE kit, one of the most expensive single items that you will need. At $1,570, you would average about 7 of those kits for a class of 28. If you're teaching multiple sections, you will need to find a way to add more. Imagine 2 sections, that's 14 kits. You're at $22,000 at this point. Yes, thankfully, this does have a state engineering code. Under engineering, we're going to call it under engineering item number 88, robotic systems. Engineering item number 88, robotic systems. And that's what the VEX system truly is. It is a robotic system. It comes complete with processors, batteries. It comes with joysticks, control sticks, VEXNet keys, items that you will never really actually need for a lot of the POE projects. You could make a full VEX robot for those who are familiar with them. There are other items on here, some required with equipment codes, some required without equipment codes, and again, the same idea. How many per 28? You go ahead and fill out a number, you can get a ballpark figure how much you're looking for. Breadboards, clear self-adhesive, smaller breadboards. These are not the large ones described for in the beginning. Resistor kits. If you're teaching digital electronics, you can share equipment back and forth. You're teaching digital electronics, you will have hookup wire back and forth. So some of this will require a little creativity. You are already buying equipment for digital. You may have digital equipment. You already have a lot of those small electrical components you will need for principles engineering. Web cameras, 150 watt incandescent lights. These are nice, but you can find workarounds. And a lot of the blue items do involve you being a little more creative to work around to save some of the energy, some of the money involved here. The rest of the stuff are considered consumables here, not big deal breakers. Alligator lead sets. You can get 4 for $11.80 from our friends Electronic Express. So some of these things are, while required, they're not going to be as expensive as you imagine. The big one is those POE VEX kits at $10,000. They come in 2 boxes. They come in a huge box, very heavy, as they got a lot of steel parts, screws, batteries, everything, motors. If you gave this to an average middle school, you could build a robot and they'd be happy. Anyway, if you see anything else to worry about, more consumables you should have on hand, but you can buy. You probably have a good idea where you can get balsa sticks or balsa strips to be able to build trusses. And that's the end of POE. Optional. There are some optional equipment here that you may already even have. It's my recollection about maybe 5 years ago or such. Dr. Eshelman, our PWCS supervisor, went ahead and bought a structural stress analyzer for every high school. Woodbridge already happened to have one because we were already Project Lead the Way. We got a second one, and that's because they were purchased for everybody. Check around. If you're teaching principles engineering, there's a good chance you already have one of these old black acrylic panel testers that with a little LCD panel that only connects to a computer through an old-fashioned RS-232 port. Doesn't even know what a USB port is. So you may already have this $3,000 piece of machinery that's been sitting idle, or you may have been using it for your CTE class. Tensile test adapters. There are ways to get around this so you can test for other items of principles engineering. So a lot of the optional stuff you can probably been exposed to it in the 2-week training session, but there are workarounds that can therefore save you some money. Let's go over to linear systems. For those friends who are teaching principles engineering, there are some things on here you will need off here. You will need force sensors. If you've had any experience in physics at the high school level, they use to be able to measure newtons, to be able to measure pounds of force. They have these little machines called they're really just force sensors, small little boxes with a plunger mechanism that can sense pulls and tugs on it, how much pull, how much force pushing on it. We use these with a combination of X equipment to build truss breakers. We use them to be able to build how much force a motor is exerting to be able to calculate work and energy. So you will need these items in red, and our big experience has been that they've been primarily useful for principles of engineering. You can use these again for maybe EDD, but really you will need to have, on average, for 28 students, it is recommended you have 4 sensors, 4 stainless steel temperature probes, and 4 GO links. Without this GO link, the force sensor will not communicate to the computer. So really treat this as one bundle. So a set of 4 for one class of 28 students POE, and if you have multiple POE classes, you use the same sensor. So obviously for all your classes, they're not all going to be able to use them at the same time unless the sections are running concurrently, which in that case, good for you. You have so many principal engineering classes that are running concurrently. Otherwise, they run back to back. You can use these obviously for the classes back to back. $816 will get you a set of 4 to get you one classroom set outfitted. Other things, footnotes, some of the things that come in the integrated circuit kits from Electron Express, capacitors. This is a good quantity of stock. If you do not have any old digital electronics equipment from previous classes at your school, this will get you a stock set of chips, components, enough to get you teaching the digital electronics curriculum right off the bat with breadboarding and everything. So, that said, yes, it would be nice to be able to use the full Project Lead web page where it's just clicking the number of sections and it spits out a long sheet and then you go on a shopping spree. The reality is that you're going to have to be a little creative. You're going to have to take the Project Lead the Way engineering workbook. You're going to have to figure out what classes are we teaching, how many kids, how many sections, what things do we already have on hand. Yes, in training I was shown how to use this wonderful stuff that makes it makes breadboarding a little simpler, makes downloading code a little simpler, downloading multi-sim simulations a little simpler, but at $300 for one, that's going to get really expensive real fast, or maybe even 2, 3 kids sharing one. Breadboarding sharing, that's kind of interesting. Usually breadboarding is a competency skill, in my opinion, that you can or cannot do. I don't know if it's something you can delegate to a group of 2 or 3. So that's about it. Now, civil engineering architecture, this is not ready yet. You can look at it and get a feel for what things are available. After discussion with other teachers who teach CEA, we'll have a better feel to what things are absolutely critical, what things are niceties not to worry about. For example, you may already own a rubber mallet, a 16-ounce rubber mallet, so you may not have to worry about spending expenditure that much. But you may not have the auto level Nikon Trevet or the site. I don't teach civil engineering, so my apologies. I don't know exactly what that's called, but I know it's expensive. I know it's cool to look through it. But some of our schools already have some of this equipment, so who knows? Anyway, that is my quick summary of this spreadsheet. Use it as a guide to figure out what you need, what you absolutely need, what you already have around, and use the inventory equipment codes on the side to be able to figure out what is possible to order through the expense authorization form, so you can create EA form to be able to submit to the Hill, which point they will turn around and be able to tell you, yes, they'll pay for this, no, they won't. Some of the stuff without EA codes, but yet it's critical, it's consumables, entirely up to you and your school to be able to supply them on your own, and that should cover it. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can contact me, Carlos Castro, at castroca@pwcs.edu. I believe you can find my information on the Woodbridge High School webpage. And with that, good luck. We'll see you in the fall.